Oh, hey, how you doing? You just caught me getting ready to respond to all the comments that, hey dummy, it's not November anymore, so it can't be November. I missed my deadline by a little bit, unfortunately. I'm well aware of it. You can go ahead and comment and give me crap about it, because, yeah, I dropped the ball. But still, I hope you like this video. Third annual, I'll be on time, I promise. Please enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. Hello, fellow nerds. A day late and a dollar short, but it's here, part 2 of Wizardry's second annual November celebration. I don't have a 3D printer, but I found Teifling's workshop and I ordered a White Werewolf Tavern model, and I was not disappointed. The product I received was just fabulous. It was at a great price, and check out the packaging. It's just totally awesome. I've never done an unboxing video before, but here we go. I decided to get Meirsoa Matriarch. I wanted to start this project with a dark, interesting base coat, even though most of it wouldn't be seen when it was completed. These ProAcryl transparents work great for this because they automatically become darker and more opaque in the deep recesses. I thinned my mix down with water before applying it to the mane. My first application when starting her fur was dark umber. As I'm editing this, I'm not sure you'll be able to actually see my progress here because it was barely visible to me as I was painting her, but as I apply the progressive layers, it becomes more apparent. My next layer that I applied was a large jump up to light umber. When painting a fur texture like this, especially on a larger 75mm model, it's very time consuming, but I never found applying the fine thin lines to be tedious myself. I found it to be relaxing, and as I progressed up through the layers, it was very gratifying to see the chaotic coloration hyenas have develop on the model. When applying this layer, I actually went through it twice. The second application wasn't a direct tracing of the previous layer. On my second pass, I varied the lengths and widths just as I had on the previous ones to help establish the depth and variation of tones. And I had increased the yellow ochre highlight just a small amount to help aid in this effect. Before moving on to my tonal progression, I applied a glaze to tie the layers together. I also took a step back down in tone, hitting shadow areas and pulling some of the darker underlying fur back into the foreground. Hyenas can have a very huge variation in their fur, with the layers of tones intermixing in a very haphazard appearance, and I wanted to do my best to interpret this on the model. Another characteristic of hyenas is their mottled coats, and the spots can vary greatly in size, depth, tone, and shape. So I decided to start adding them in at this stage so I could allow for these variants. I started with coal black for the darkest spots, buried deep within her dense coat, and then began the process of layering up on top of them to bury them within the tangle of fur. To keep the multicolored chaotic look to the fur, I continued to jump back and forth in tones as I layered up on my progression to my highest highlight, sometimes adding new colors or variations of tones I'd already used. As I traveled through the multiple layers of fur, I enhanced some of her spots, covered some completely or partially, and added new ones and varied tones. With our basic tonal variations established, I decided it was time for a little Matriarch makeover and concentrate some on her facial details and coloration. I began the process of layering up from her base coat with many of the same tones as the rest of her fur. The main difference when approaching her face was the addition of colors not found elsewhere on her coat and switching the fur texture from a long shaggy look to much shorter, finer hair texture. I wanted a gradual blend from her muzzle and face coloration into the rest of her fur, and accomplished this by layering back and forth between tones, increasing the brightness of her face, making it a focal point of the model without it looking like a large jump in tones or a drastic change from her coloration already established. I also took time in this step to start working on her stomach fur, which would be similar in tones that were found on her face. When painting her face, I realized for ease of painting and filming, I could have kept her left arm off and painted it separately. Later on in the video, this problem is somewhat solved, only to add another problem, which in itself is more problematic and stressful. Stay tuned. We are rapidly approaching the end of the year, and my second year of doing these videos. I'd like to thank everyone who has watched my videos and all my subscribers. I'm currently at 761 and would love to hit the 800 mark before 2025. So if you're not subscribed, please do. Like, share, comment. Any ideas you have that you'd like to see, I'd be happy to hear. I haven't made a Gaslands video for a while and plan to do some more soon. I have a couple of dioramas already planned, some terrain and battle map content, and I have the third annual GNOLLVEMBER video for next year brewing in my brain already. So if any or all of that sounds good to you, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when the next video lands. When it came time to paint her clothing, I wanted to stay with primarily earthy tones, nothing real bold or flashy. I didn't want her to be monotone either, but I'd assume that gnolls would have basic handcrafted clothes from hides and natural dyes, unless it was a stolen item. My original idea for this year's GNOLLVEMBER video was a ragged, battle-worn, mangy, rabies-infested warrior. White Werewolf Tavern has such models, and I had almost purchased one of them. But As I continually searched the internet for that perfect demonic-looking gnoll, this Meirsoa Matriarch model kept popping up. And the more I saw her, the more I became captivated by her haunting majesty. And I'm so very glad I did. This model was just a tremendous joy to paint. I can't wait to order another White Werewolf Tavern model through Teifling's workshop, and there's a very good chance that next year's GNOLLVEMBER video will be featuring one of their models. As you can see, Meirsoa is loaded with great details on a beautiful sculpt. And it's not overloaded with details. Everything is where it should be and just enough of it. And even though the sculpt is a static pose, there's an elegance and a sense of majesty to the pose, power. And the way her skirt is sculpted, there is movement there, and flow. It's as if the wind is gently blowing. It's just an awesome model. And no, I'm not sponsored by White Werewolf Tavern or Teifling's workshop. They don't even know who the hell I am. And as long as I'm up on the soapbox singing praises, how about these ProAcryl paints? Such vibrant colors with great coverage, they mix well together with a predictable outcome, not flat or muddied, and they glaze like a dream. They don't know who I am either, but they are getting a lot of my money, and will continue to until I own all their products. Hey, remember earlier when I said I could have left the arm off so the staff wasn't in the way? Remember that? Remember I said it'd be somewhat solved? Remember that? Remember I said it was stressful though? Remember? Well, got done painting for the night, hit her with my elbow shutting down the camera, and BAM! Problem solved, new problem created. I'd really like to make a video just once. Well, no. This shit is stressful enough the way it is without sabotaging myself. Anyway, I told you I'd changed my mind about this little piece thing here on her hip, and this is where I ended up. I'm not really sure if it's like tie-dye that I end up with, or an acid wash, or a stone wash if you're from the 80s, or 70s, because all those references are pretty dated. Later on, I decided to jazz this up a little bit, so the end product actually has some yellows mixed into the white areas on this. After the skirt was taken care of, I began to focus on her skull belt, blocking in some base colors to decide which direction to go with each skull. I definitely didn't want them the same color scheme and blending into one another, so I took them in quite a different direction to avoid that. With the skull itself, I started off with a bright yellow base coat. I wet blended that with some browns and some creams to give a fresher looking skull look to it as opposed to a bleached white skull. The sculpt had a cool carving already in the skull, so I used some burned orange for a pop of color. All the way through this project, I've been adhering to a particular color scheme, varying the ways that I applied the paints or changing up their saturation throughout different elements, but I wanted the legging things that she has on to be a bit different, so I'd added some greens in. I already had a greenish color on her top by putting yellow over top of dark umber, so I didn't think that this paint scheme for the sock thingies would be that much out of place. I know the following footage is some pretty basic layering information, but if you're new to miniature painting, this is a good roadmap to every destination when layering. I lay down a black-brown as my shadow color. When I move from black-brown, it's a 50-50 mix with dark camo green, then dark camo green, followed by dark camo green 50-50 mix with green, in turn followed by green. Moving up from there, it's green 50-50 with bright yellow green, and then finally bright yellow green as my highlight. Traveling up in these half steps, covering a little less each time, helps eliminate harsh layer lines and simplifies pulling it all together with a glaze at the end. When I'd reached the apex of my tonal progression, I decided I wanted more pop, so out came the brighter tones. Is your pop still not poppy enough? Well, then add an off-white to your palette. I'm tracing over the yellow pop color that I just laid down with my off-white. Then simply reapply your pop color or highest highlight, and it will be even brighter yet. In November Part 1 video, I used this same method on the lightning portal on the display base. I'm not quite sure if you've noticed the flies that keep coming in a frame, running around the wet palette and such. I'm not really sure if my painting stinks, or if painting this model I am somehow inadvertently summoning Yinagu. It was now time, finally, to paint up Mr. Snappy Off Staffy Skull Guy. And oh mama, what a cool skull this thing is. Whoever sculpted this model did such a great job. Of course, you'd be hard-pressed not to drool when looking at the models White Werewolf Tavern have to offer. When painting this skull, my method may seem a little unorthodox. After applying my base color, I then remove a large portion of it, before then reapplying some more of the same color, only to once again remove a large portion. This subtractive method is very similar to oil washes or weathering techniques, and although I do own some Noosh, I did not require it for this application. Hopefully here you can see the method to my madness. I have several tones on the skull after using only one paint in this way, and it mimics the uneven nature in which skulls weather, especially in heavily wooded or jungled areas. When using this technique with different tones, you can then use speed, contrast, or transparent paints over top of that. Or, as I'm doing here, use it as a sort of a zenithal highlight guide for the rest of the paint job. By using half stabs, as I spoke of earlier, I slowly build up my highlights. I really liked how the horned skull on Meirsoa's build turned out, so I decided to follow that paint scheme somewhat on the ram skull. With the skull looking pretty good, I began to work on the horns a bit. I had the horns looking very convincing and I was very happy with the results. But as I do, I changed my mind and I decided that I wanted darker, more exotic looking horns. And then it was time for the banner, and I was going for a human flesh look, because, once again, she's a gnoll. And somehow, I have incomplete footage of this process, so I only have the first couple of steps. And here she is in all her matriarchal glory, Meirsoa. Another project done, and another November come and gone. This one, a little too soon for me, I think. Oh well, there's always next year. Made some mistakes, averted some crises, learned some lessons. I hope you enjoyed this video. I love painting this White Werewolf Tavern model. It was amazing. I'll be back soon, and I hope you'll be there with me. And hopefully, even more of you. All the stress and work is worth it. These videos are always fun when they're done. Until we meet again, make some magic happen. As always, I'm Wes, and this is Wizardry.